and the ETs themselves they rely on telepathy as their sole means of major communication. Now, some of them in their different special groups can use vocalizations, language, and things like that. For example, there are groups that speak German, things like that. But in general, any type of cross-species communication is telepathic. And when you're dealing with these ET groups, you're dealing with huge levels of species, and all of the communication is telepathic. So, but within the large groups, there are people among subgroups that actually do use some vocalizations and language out of habit or whatever. But that's but basically speaking, telepathy or psionics, as you're talking about, is important. Now, what you're talking about with regard to psionics is something that was discovered that people who are telepathically, mentally talented can actually draw in the UFOs and actually get them close, and then, and so on. Now I have to raise the issue that is the big gorilla in the room. How is it that these ET ships and the crash retrieval program that David Grush and Noel Elizondo and others have been talking about, and now you said Barber, he was actually physically involved with picking them up. Why are the ships crashing? Now, these ET ships are capable of flying across the entire galaxy to get to us. Now, are they crashing because they didn't drop into Pep Boys and get the oil changed? Is the motor breaking? Why are they crashing? So, what's actually happening? And that's not being covered in any of the congressional hearings. They are saying that the ships are crashing and that the U.S. military zips out with people like Barber running helicopters and picks them up and takes them to a secure location. It doesn't say anything like what happens to them after. It doesn't say what happens to the people that are inside them. And it also doesn't explain why they're crashing in the first place. Those ships are very capable of not crashing. There's a reason why they're crashing. There are the different groups within the extraterrestrials are very complicated. Now, we at we have one agenda, which is to push for full disclosure so that humanity and your audience can eventually hear all of this and have it all come out. It's basically, we're really pushing for it to happen this year. But there's a fundamental aspect. Why are they crashing? They are crashing because there are two basic groupings of extraterrestrials interacting with Earth right now. We call them the good guys and the bad guys, or the good ETs and the bad ETs. The bad ETs, from our perspective, have literally written agreements with the United States government to help reverse engineer some of the technology in the crashed ships so that the United States government can develop their own advanced tech in what they call the secret space program. Now, that aspect of the written agreements, if you know anything about what's going on, is not in dispute. And if you want to use Google Haim Eshed, Haim, second name Eshed, Eshed. He was the former CEO, the top guy in the Israeli Space Directorate for 30 years. He gave an interview that he thought he was going to be able to get away with in Hebrew in a Hebrew publication, but he didn't realize how many people understood Hebrew, and it was immediately translated into a zillion languages, where he actually talked about the written agreements and the interactions with both the Israeli government, but also the some other governments, but specifically the United States government, and he talked about the written agreements between these groups, between the ETs and the U.S. government. The trouble is that the groups that made the written agreements were wanting the U.S. government to actually have that technology because they are in dispute with the other side of the ETs that we call the good ETs, which are the ones that we interact with. And there is a soft war going on between the good ETs and the bad ETs. And the bad ETs have the interactions with the political elite totally locked up. But the issue is that the U.S. government wanted that weapons tech. Now, the good ETs are trying to help us and help in the disclosure movement so that can be fully blown out and people can finally hear what's actually been going on. The bad ETs cannot shoot down the good ET ships. to try because they basically run Earth. Bad ETs basically have the whole hierarchy of the political elite locked up. They want to keep that way for various reasons that I can get into if you want. But the bad ETs cannot shoot down the ships of the good ETs without changing the soft war into, and or I call it a cold war into a hot war. And they don't want to do that. Neither side really wants to change the Cold War into a hot war. However, there is nothing stopping the bad ETs from giving the tech to the Americans so that they can use it in their secret space program and then let the Americans shoot down the ET ships, the good ET ships. So all of the crashes, or most of the crashes that you're hearing about, that David Grush and Lou Elizondo and Barbara are talking about, are crashes of my side, the ships that are my people. They are the good ETs, and they're being shot down by the American secret space program. Some of the shoot downs happen with facilities that are on the ground, and some of them happen with facilities that are in space. But the issue is that one of the ways that they lure the good ETs in is with these people who use psionics to go into a deep mental state, ask friendly and ask for guidance and get closer. And some of the ships actually get closer. And when that does happen, whoop, they can get seduced into a position where they're trapped. Now, the good ETs could defend themselves easily. In a matter of seconds, they could knock out the entire American secret space program. So it's not a matter of can they not defend themselves. They don't defend themselves because then the American government would then say, oh my gosh, they're the aggressors. They're knocking out our ships, which we so much need. We need that high tech, that weapons tech, and they're knocking them out. So that would then throw the American government further into the hands of the bad ETs. It would be very self-defeating. So the good ETs are allowing themselves to be shot down. And that means there's a tremendous amount of sacrifice that's going on. You have no idea how much torture happens to the survivors of those crafts. So people like Barber take the craft and takes it to a secure location, but the people in the craft get given to the bad ETs. And you don't even want to know what happened to them. And these are my people. These are people that I've been interacting with my whole life. These are people I know personally. And you're supposed to know about this, and you don't know about it because of the secrecy that's involved in the entire thing. So right now you can say, this is crazy. This goes way beyond my pay grade. Why should I be told about this? Could this be even true? And you're still stuck in the question of, do the ETs exist? Just get past the question of whether they exist, and then everything else I'm talking about makes total sense. If they exist, then they've been doing stuff. What the heck have they been doing? That's the question. Now, we have projects going back thousands of years, going back to the early religions of Ra, Zeus, the whole thing, Hathor, all that stuff. We have projects on Moses, I'm Jesus. I mean, we have projects on things going back, and all the way to the current time as well, including a lot of other projects that are dealing with archaeological questions, political questions. All of that can be found on farsightprime.com. The reason that you don't know about it is it's being kept away from you. The same reason why we are shadow banned on Google, an active attempt to keep things away from the masses. It hasn't affected Bing and some of the other search engines, but the biggest search engine is quite clear as day. They don't want, the powers that be don't want you to know this stuff.